I never imagined my parents would completely vanish from my life the moment I needed them most. The pregnancy test showed positive during my sophomore year at Stanford. My boyfriend fled, my scholarship was at risk, and when I called home for support, my father's words shattered me. "You've thrown away everything we sacrificed for. You're no longer our daughter." 5 years later, my beautiful son Jackson is thriving. I've built a successful life without them, and now they're suddenly at my door, demanding to be grandparents. Growing up in a small town in Wisconsin, I was always the kid with a plan. My parents, Thomas and Martha Green, had sacrificed everything to give me opportunities they never had. Dad worked 60 hours a week at his hardware store, while Mom taught third grade at the local elementary school. Their message was consistent. Education was the ticket out, the path to something better. "Stanley," my dad would say, pointing to his calloused hands. "These hands paid for your SAT prep course. Don't waste that money." When the Stanford acceptance letter arrived, my parents hosted a neighborhood barbecue. It was the first time I'd seen my father cry. "Our son is going to be somebody," he told everyone who would listen. The pride in his voice was unmistakable, and the pressure that came with it was crushing. I arrived at Stanford terrified of failing. Every B felt like betrayal. Every weekend spent studying instead of partying felt necessary, until I met Ethan Campbell during freshman biology lab. Ethan was everything I wasn't. Confident, carefree, from a wealthy San Francisco family who'd attended elite universities for generations. When he partnered with me for lab work, I couldn't understand why. He was pre-med, devastatingly handsome, and could have chosen anyone. "You're the only one who knows what you're doing," he explained with a charming smile. Our study sessions turned into coffee dates, which evolved into dinners, and by Thanksgiving, we were officially dating. I called home, nervous but excited to share this development. "Is he studying something practical?" Mom asked immediately. "He's pre-med," I answered, relieved to have the right response. "Good," Dad chimed in. "Just remember why you're there, Stanley. Relationships come after degrees." I assured them my grades remained perfect. I'd even secured a prestigious research position for the spring semester. The dean had personally mentioned me as a candidate for a summer research grant. Life felt perfectly on track until February of sophomore year. Ethan and I had grown closer. He'd taken me home for Christmas to meet his parents, who lived in a house overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. They'd been polite but distant, clearly wondering what their son saw in the scholarship kid from Wisconsin. "They'll warm up," Ethan promised, "just like you need to warm up in other ways." Our physical relationship had progressed slowly, my inexperience and anxiety holding me back. Ethan had been patient, but his patience was wearing thin. Valentine's Day came with expectations I wasn't sure I was ready for, but I didn't want to lose him. 2 weeks after Valentine's Day, while preparing for midterms, the nausea began. At first, I attributed it to stress or cafeteria food, but when it persisted for a week, my roommate Jake looked at me strangely. "Dude, you've thrown up 3 mornings in a row." The possibility hadn't even crossed my mind. Male pregnancies were rare but not unheard of. My body had always shown signs of the condition that made it possible, but doctors had told my parents it was unlikely to affect my life in any meaningful way. The campus health center confirmed what seemed impossible. On the same day I received notification about advancing to the final round for the prestigious Blackwell Summer Research Grant, I learned I was 8 weeks pregnant. The nurse practitioner handed me pamphlets outlining options while I sat frozen in shock. My carefully constructed future seemed to dissolve before my eyes. When she asked if there was someone I wanted to call, Ethan's name caught in my throat. That night, I waited outside his dorm. When he saw my face, he knew something was wrong. "Let's walk," I suggested, not wanting his roommates to overhear. We ended up at a quiet bench near the engineering building. My hands trembled as I told him. I expected shock, perhaps anger or fear, emotions that mirrored my own. What I didn't expect was the cold calculation that crossed his face. "You need to take care of this," he said, voice suddenly clinical. "I'm applying to med schools next year. This can't happen." "I don't know what I want to do yet," I admitted. "There's nothing to decide," he snapped. "My parents would cut me off. Do you understand what that means? No medical school, no future. When I didn't immediately agree, he stood up. Figure it out, Stanley. Just leave me out of it. By the next morning, Ethan had blocked my number. By the end of the week, he'd switched lab sections. Rumors spread through our social circle that I'd cheated on him, that I was mentally unstable, that the pregnancy might not even be his. I was completely alone with a decision that would alter my entire life, and spring break was approaching. I needed to go home, to talk to my parents. Despite their strictness, they had always been there for me. Dad's favorite saying was "Greens stick together when times get tough." I was about to discover the unspoken condition to that family motto. The Greyhound bus ride from California to Wisconsin gave me 48 hours to rehearse what I would say to my parents. I drafted and deleted texts, wrote, and tore up letters. Nothing seemed adequate. How do you tell the people who've invested everything in your success that you veered wildly off course? Spring in Wisconsin still carried winter's chill. Dad picked me up at the bus station in his pickup, the same one he'd had since I was 10. "You look thin," he commented, eyeing me suspiciously. "College food not agreeing with you?" If he only knew. Mom had prepared my favorite meal, pot roast with carrots and potatoes. The house smelled like home, and for a moment, I let myself believe everything might be okay. We ate dinner with their eager questions about classes, professors, and grades. I answered mechanically, the weight of my secret making each bite difficult to swallow. After dinner, while Mom loaded the dishwasher, I knew it was time. "Can we talk in the living room? There's something I need to tell you both." The change in atmosphere was immediate. Dad's posture stiffened. Mom dried her hands slowly on a dish towel. They followed me to the living room, sitting across from me like interviewers rather than parents. "I'm pregnant," I said, the words hanging in the air like smoke. The silence lasted 10 seconds but felt like years. Dad spoke first, his voice eerily calm. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No, sir." "And the father?" "His name is Ethan. He's not going to be involved." Dad's face reddened. "So not only did you throw away everything we sacrificed for, but you did it for someone who doesn't even have the decency to stand by you?" "Thomas," Mom interjected, but her voice lacked conviction. 8 years of extra shifts so he could have sat tutors. Dad continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "Remortgaging the house for college visits. For what? So he could go wild the minute he's out from under our roof?" "It wasn't like that," I tried to explain. "We were careful. It just happened. I'm still going to finish school." "I can." "Finish school?" Dad laughed bitterly. "With what money? Your scholarship has academic and moral requirements. With a baby? Be realistic. There are programs for student parents. I've already looked into it." Dad stood up, towering over me. "Not a penny of our money will go towards supporting this mistake. You've made your choice, Stanley. You've chosen to throw away everything we've worked for." Mom finally found her voice. "What are you planning to do about the situation?" The clinical way she referred to her grandchild felt like a slap. "I'm keeping the baby," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Dad's expression hardened. "Then you're no longer our son." "Thomas," Mom gasped. "No, Martha. I won't watch him destroy his life and drag us down with him." He turned back to me. "You have until morning to pack whatever you brought. The bus leaves at 10. He walked out, the front door slamming behind him. Mom sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, please," I begged. She shook her head slowly. "You have to fix this, Stanley. You have to make this right with your father. By getting rid of my baby? That's the only solution?" Her silence was answer enough. I spent the night in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by academic trophies and ribbons. Evidence of the son they wanted, not the one sitting there, arms wrapped around his stomach, protecting the tiny life within. In the morning, Mom drove me to the bus station. Dad had already left for work. The ride was silent until we pulled up to the curb. "Here," she said, pressing $500 into my hand. "Your father can't know." It wasn't support. It was a payoff. 30 pieces of silver to ease her conscience. "When you fix this situation, call us," she said. "We can pretend this never happened." I got out without taking the money. My last act of defiance. Back at Stanford, worse news awaited. My roommate Jake had moved out, requesting reassignment. The Blackwell Grant Committee wanted to discuss my changing circumstances before proceeding with my application. My academic advisor suggested a medical leave of absence after hearing rumors about my condition. The final blow came when I checked my bank account. The joint account my parents had established for emergency expenses had been closed. The health insurance card in my wallet, still under my parents' policy, had been canceled. The promised summer contribution for housing had been withdrawn. They hadn't just cut me off emotionally. They had systematically erased every safety net I had. I sat on my dorm room floor, entirely alone, with $12.37 to my name, wondering how everything had fallen apart so completely in just 3 weeks. That night, as I contemplated my rapidly diminishing options, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "This is Dr. Williams from the sociology department. I heard you might need to talk. My office hours are tomorrow at 3. I didn't know then that this message would be the first step toward rebuilding my life from ashes. Dr. Williams wasn't what I expected. A tall woman with gray-streaked dreadlocks and colorful reading glasses, she welcomed me into an office filled with plants and student artwork. "You don't know me," she said, "but I run the Parenting Students Alliance. Your situation isn't as unique as you might think." She didn't ask intrusive questions or offer hollow sympathy. Instead, she laid out practical pathways forward. "You have rights as a pregnant student. The university can't discriminate against you, though they often do in subtle ways. My job is to make sure that doesn't happen." By the end of that meeting, I had applications for emergency housing assistance, pregnancy Medicaid, and campus food pantry access. Dr. Williams had also connected me with the financial aid office to adjust my package based on my new independent status. "And this," she said, handing me a business card, "is for when you're ready to think about childcare and returning to classes after the baby comes." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Not everything was solved, but there was a path forward, however difficult. The next few months passed in a blur of bureaucratic hurdles and physical challenges. Morning sickness didn't respect class schedules. My expanding waistline drew stares and whispers. Former friends crossed the quad to avoid me. Ethan's friends made cutting remarks within earshot. I moved from my dorm to subsidized family housing, a small studio apartment in a complex filled with other student parents, most of them women. They welcomed me with hand-me-down maternity clothes and practical advice. Tanya, a law student with a 2-year-old daughter, lived next door. She became my pregnancy mentor. "Nobody tells you how much your feet swell," she warned, offering me her collection of oversized slippers. Summer arrived, and without the Blackwell grant, I needed income. Dr. Williams helped me secure a position as a research assistant in her department, work I could do mostly from home as my pregnancy progressed. I tried calling home once more in July, hoping 3 months had softened my parents' stance. Dad answered. "Hello? Dad? It's me." The line went dead. When I called back, it went straight to voicemail. After that, my number was blocked. On August 12th, in the sweltering California heat, my water broke 3 weeks early. Tanya drove me to the hospital, calling Dr. Williams on the way. They both stayed through 22 hours of labor. When Jackson Thomas Green entered the world at 6 pounds, 4 ounces, I wasn't alone after all. Holding him for the first time, his tiny hand gripping my finger, I made him a promise. "You will always know you're loved, exactly as you are." The reality of single parenthood hit hard during those first weeks. Sleep deprivation made simple tasks mountainous. Breastfeeding was painful and difficult. The isolation was crushing. While other sophomores returned to campus for fall semester, posting pictures of parties and football games, I was learning to function on 2-hour sleep increments, while completing online coursework during Jackson's naps. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, we found our rhythm. The parenting students community became my village. We traded babysitting hours, shared meals, celebrated small victories. By Jackson's 3-month checkup, I had managed to complete 2 courses online and secure a childcare subsidy for the spring semester. I sent my parents a photo of Jackson bundled in a Stanford onesie someone had gifted us, his dark eyes wide and curious. The email bounced back as undeliverable. Their rejection still had the power to wound, but the intensity was fading, replaced by something harder and more protective. Thanksgiving brought an unexpected gift. Dr. Williams invited Jackson and me to her family dinner. Nobody should be alone on holidays, she insisted. Surrounded by her boisterous extended family, who passed Jackson around like a precious treasure, I glimpsed what family support should look like. As winter quarter approached, I prepared to take 2 in-person classes, while Jackson attended the campus child care center part-time. My careful scheduling allowed for nursing breaks and quick checks on him between classes. The first day I dropped him off, I cried all the way to my environmental science lecture. The kind-faced childcare worker assured me this was normal. They all cry the first day. Parents more than babies, she said gently. That same week, while crossing campus with Jackson strapped to my chest, I spotted Ethan walking with a group of friends. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, quickening his pace. One of his friends noticed and nudged him. "Isn't that your crazy ex?" he said loudly enough for me to hear. Ethan shrugged. "Who knows if it's even mine?" She got around. The blatant lie froze me in place. My reputation, already damaged, would be shredded by this narrative. In that moment, watching them walk away laughing, something shifted inside me. I wouldn't allow their cruelty to define us. That night, I started a blog. Single Dad, Stanford Sophomore. Its first post detailed the realities of balancing parenthood with education, without self-pity or blame. I didn't name Ethan or my parents, focusing instead on practical challenges and small victories. To my surprise, the blog found an audience. Other student parents across the country commented with their own stories. Faculty members reached out with support. An article in the student newspaper highlighted my journey, alongside other student parents fighting to complete their education against the odds. When I ran into Ethan's friend at the library weeks later, his smirk had been replaced by discomfort. My truth, plainly told, had more power than their whispered lies. By Jackson's first birthday, I had completed 3/4 of coursework, maintained a 3.8 GPA, and secured a summer internship that allowed remote work. We celebrated with a small party in the community room of our housing complex, surrounded by our chosen family of other student parents and supportive faculty. As I watched Jackson smash his cake with gleeful abandon, I realized something profound. Despite everything, we were thriving. 3 years passed in a blur of growth and challenges. Jackson transformed from a toddler to a preschooler, his personality emerging, curious, stubborn, compassionate. So much like me, yet entirely his own person. My academic path had shifted from pre-law to education policy, inspired by my experiences navigating systems never designed for student parents. Dr. Williams became my thesis advisor and mentor as I researched institutional barriers to education access. Graduation day arrived under perfect blue skies. Jackson, now 4, wore a miniature Stanford t-shirt and couldn't understand why everyone was taking his picture. My fellow student parents formed a cheering section when my name was called. Stanley Green, Bachelor of Arts in Public Policy, with honors. Walking across that stage with Jackson on my hip wasn't how I'd imagined this moment during those long nights studying in high school. It was better. We had earned this together. After the ceremony, while other graduates took photos with proud parents, I found myself searching the crowd, some stubborn part of me still hoping to see my mother's tearful smile or hear my father's proud declarations. "Looking for someone?" Dr. Williams asked gently. "Old ghosts," I admitted. She squeezed my shoulder. "You mailed them an announcement?" I nodded. Like the birth announcement, the high school graduation photos, and the Christmas cards, it had been returned unopened, with return to sender stamped across the front. "Their loss," she said firmly, before being pulled away by another faculty member. That evening, at a small gathering in our apartment, Tanya raised a toast. To Stanley, who showed us all how it's done. And to Jackson, the best-behaved audience member at a 3-hour graduation ceremony in history. Everyone laughed as Jackson, mouthful of cake, gave a chocolate-covered thumbs up. The following week, armed with my new degree, I started as a junior program coordinator at Tech Futures, a nonprofit focused on education access in underserved communities. The position offered health insurance, flexible hours, and growth potential. More importantly, it was meaningful work that could accommodate single parenthood. Jackson thrived in his new preschool, making friends easily and showing an early aptitude for numbers and patterns. Our tiny one-bedroom apartment near work was a sanctuary we'd created together, filled with his artwork and our shared rituals. At Tech Futures, I met Allie Carter, the organization's communications director. Tall, with a quick laugh and quicker mind, she became both professional mentor and friend. When Jackson caught chickenpox, and I needed emergency childcare coverage, Allie stepped in without hesitation. I had a single dad, she explained, expertly applying calamine lotion to Jackson's spots. This is just paying it forward. Allie became Aunt Allie to Jackson, a fixture at weekend park outings and holiday celebrations. Having someone who chose to be in our lives, who loved Jackson simply because he existed, began healing wounds I hadn't acknowledged were still open. That Christmas, our third without family contact, I created new traditions. We baked cookies for neighbors, volunteered at a local toy drive, and decorated our small tree with handmade ornaments. When Jackson asked about grandparents after hearing friends talk about holiday visits, I told him a gentle version of the truth. Some families are big, with grandparents and lots of cousins. Some families are small, like ours. But all families have love, and that's what matters most. He accepted this with a child's practicality. Can Aunt Allie be our family? She already is, buddy. In the spring, a surprising email arrived from my boss. Tech Futures had been selected to present at a national education conference in Chicago. They wanted me to lead the presentation on our new digital equity initiative, my project for the past 6 months. This is a big opportunity, Stanley, my boss explained. You'll be speaking to policymakers and potential funders. The board specifically requested you present. Pride mingled with anxiety. Chicago was just a 2-hour drive from my hometown. Being so close yet so distant from my parents brought complicated emotions. Still, this professional recognition was validation of everything I'd worked toward. The presentation was a success, earning Tech Futures new partnerships and funding opportunities. Afterward, the conference organizer approached me. That was exceptional, especially from someone so young. How long have you been in this field? Officially? 1 year. Unofficially, since I became a student parent 5 years ago. Her eyebrows raised. That's a story I'd like to hear sometime. It's actually the core of our approach at Tech Futures. Lived experience informing policy is more effective than theoretical solutions. She handed me her card. We need more voices like yours at these events. Call me for next year's conference. That night in my hotel room, riding the high of professional validation, I made an impulsive decision. I searched social media for my parents, something I'd avoided for years. My mother's profile appeared immediately. Martha Green, still teaching 3rd grade, still posting inspirational quotes about education and children. I scrolled through photos of classroom activities, teacher appreciation events, and my finger froze on the screen. There was my mother at a family gathering, holding a baby. The caption read, "Blessed to welcome my grand-niece Lily." The betrayal felt fresh again. She could celebrate a distant relative's child while rejecting her own grandson. Out of morbid curiosity, I clicked on the comments. "You're a natural grandmother," wrote someone named Susan. My mother's reply sent ice through my veins. Sadly, I'll never have grandchildren of my own. But being a grand aunt is the next best thing. The blatant erasure of Jackson's existence, of my existence, was breathtaking. I scrolled further, discovering an entire fictional narrative my parents had constructed. According to comments on various posts, I had gone off the deep end during college, refused their help, and cut contact. In their version, they were the abandoned parents, not the ones who had done the abandoning. I closed the browser, hands shaking with anger. The carefully constructed peace I'd built felt suddenly fragile. That night, I called Allie. "They've been lying about me," I said when she answered, "making themselves the victims. Allie listened as I explained what I'd found. When I finished, her response was measured. Of course they did. People who reject their children need a narrative that doesn't make them monsters. But everyone back home thinks I abandoned them. Does that actually matter? Those people aren't in your life anymore. She was right, logically. But emotionally, being cast as the villain in my own story cut deep. Upon returning to California, I channeled that energy into work and parenting. Tech Futures promoted me following the conference success. Jackson graduated from preschool and prepared for kindergarten. We moved to a two-bedroom apartment with a small yard. Life continued its forward momentum. Then, on Jackson's 5th birthday, everything changed again. Among the stack of cards from friends and Jackson's classmates was an envelope with familiar handwriting, my mother's precise penmanship. Inside was a birthday card with $20 and a brief note. Happy birthday to our grandson Jackson. We hope to meet you soon. Love, Grandma and Grandpa Green. No apology. No acknowledgement of 5 years of silence. Just a presumptuous card, acting as though they had any right to Jackson's life. I tucked the card away before Jackson could see it. The joy of his birthday celebration suddenly overshadowed by the past I'd worked so hard to move beyond. The morning after Jackson's birthday, I pulled the card from my desk drawer, studying it for hidden meanings or clues to my parents' sudden change of heart. The generic birthday wishes and presumptuous signature, as Grandma and Grandpa made my stomach turn. Jackson bounded into the room, still riding the high of his birthday celebration. "Daddy, can we have pancakes today? It's my birthday weekend." I tucked the card away and forced a smile. Birthday weekend pancakes coming right up. Champion. Over breakfast, Jackson chatted excitedly about starting kindergarten the following week, his new friends, and his 5th birthday party at the Science Museum scheduled for Saturday. Not once did he mention missing grandparents or extended family. Our life was full and complete without them. Why, then, did that card leave me so unsettled? After dropping Jackson at summer day camp, I called Dr. Williams, now retired but still a trusted advisor. "They've made contact," I said without preamble when she answered. Her silence spoke volumes. She understood immediately. After 5 years? What do they want? They sent a birthday card to Jackson, acting like they have some claim to being his grandparents. And how do you feel about that? The question was simple but profound. How did I feel? Angry, certainly. Confused. Violated. Somehow, as though they'd intruded into the safe space we'd created. "I don't know what they want," I finally said, "but I know I don't trust their motives." Dr. Williams hummed thoughtfully. "Trust your instincts, Stanley. You've earned that right. Whatever you decide about contact, set clear boundaries. Remember, you're not that vulnerable sophomore anymore." Her words stayed with me as I drove to work. I was no longer powerless. Any relationship with my parents would be on my terms, protecting Jackson first and foremost. That resolve was tested sooner than expected. 3 days later, while preparing for Jackson's Saturday party, my doorbell rang. Standing on my porch were my parents, looking both exactly the same and completely different. Dad's hair had gone fully gray. Mom was thinner, with deeper lines around her eyes. Both wore expressions of nervous anticipation. "Stanley," Mom breathed, stepping forward. "You look wonderful." I blocked the doorway, heart hammering. "What are you doing here?" Dad cleared his throat. "We came to see you, and to meet our grandson." The casual claim to Jackson sent anger surging through me. "You don't have a grandson," I said coldly. "You made that decision 5 years ago." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We've made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But we're here now." 5 years too late," I replied, noticing the rental car parked at the curb. "How did you even find my address?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. "We hired someone. After our letters kept coming back." "One card is not letters," I pointed out. "We've sent birthday and Christmas cards for 3 years," Mom insisted. "To your old address at Stanford. When they all came back, we knew we needed to try harder." This new information confused me. I'd never received any cards before this one. Had they really been trying to reach out? Or was this another manipulation? Before I could respond, Jackson's voice called from inside. "Daddy? Who's at the door?" My parents' faces transformed at the sound of his voice. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad straightened, peering over my shoulder. "Just some visitors, buddy. I'll be right there," I called back, then lowered my voice. "You need to leave. Now is not the time." "Please," Mom whispered. "Just 5 minutes." "No. Not like this. Not without warning. Not without discussing what happened first." I reached for my phone. "Give me your number. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk," without Jackson present. They reluctantly provided their hotel information. As they turned to leave, Mom placed a gift bag on the porch. "For Jackson's birthday. Please let him have it, even if you're angry with us." After they left, I examined the gift, a high-quality astronomy kit with a real telescope. Exactly the kind of educational present they would have chosen for me at that age. I set it aside, unwilling to introduce it without context. That night, after Jackson was asleep, I called Allie. "They showed up at my door," I explained, acting like the past 5 years never happened. "That's some audacity," Allie said. "What do you think they really want?" "I don't know. They claim they've been sending cards for years, but this is the first one I've received." "People don't suddenly develop consciences after 5 years of silence," Allie noted. "Something else is driving this." She was right, but what? Financial problems? Health issues? Simple loneliness? 2 days later, I agreed to meet my parents at their hotel. Allie watched Jackson, telling him I had a work meeting. The conversation started awkwardly. We sat in the hotel lobby, 3 strangers with shared blood, but little else. "You've done well for yourself," Dad began. "Nice home, good job from what we could find online." "No thanks to you," I replied, the bitterness impossible to contain. Mom flinched. "We deserve that. But please believe us when we say we've regretted how things happened." "Regretted?" I echoed. "You cut me off completely when I needed you most. You let me think for 5 years that you wanted nothing to do with me or your grandson. And now you expect what? To play happy grandparents? To pretend none of that happened?" Dad's jaw tightened. "We made a terrible mistake. We were shocked and disappointed and reacted badly. By the time we realized our error, you'd blocked us out." "I blocked you out?" The audacity was breathtaking. "You told me I was no longer your son. You cut off my health insurance while I was pregnant. You closed our joint bank account without warning. You returned every letter and announcement I sent. And you've been telling people back home that I abandoned you." They exchanged uncomfortable glances. "We were hurt," Mom said weakly. "We said things we didn't mean." "For 5 years?" I challenged. "That's not a momentary lapse. That's a deliberate choice." The conversation circled painfully, their apologies feeling hollow without real acknowledgement of the damage done. Finally, they reached the real purpose of their visit. "We want to be part of Jackson's life," Dad said firmly. "He deserves to know his grandparents." "Why now?" I asked directly. "What changed?" Another uncomfortable exchange of glances. "We're not getting any younger," Dad said. "And family becomes more important as you age." Something in his tone felt off. The practical hardware store owner I grew up with was never this sentimental. "We'd like to start with visits," Mom added quickly. "We could come out monthly, or you could bring Jackson to Wisconsin for holidays." Their presumption that they could dictate terms after years of silence was staggering. "Jackson doesn't even know you exist," I pointed out. "I'm not disrupting his life to satisfy your sudden desire to play grandparents." Dad's expression hardened. "He has a right to know his family." "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "Family doesn't abandon you when you need them most. The people who've been there for Jackson, that's his family." The meeting ended with tentative plans to speak again, but no agreements about Jackson. As I left, Dad called after me. "This isn't over, Stanley. One way or another, we're going to be part of our grandson's life." Something in his tone sent a chill through me. It wasn't the voice of a regretful father seeking reconciliation. It was the voice of someone used to getting his way, by whatever means necessary. I didn't realize then just how far they would go to force their way back into our lives. The next week brought an unexpected complication. Jackson started kindergarten at Oak Ridge Elementary, thrilled with his new classroom and teacher. At back-to-school night, I chatted with other parents, including Daniel Wyatt, a single father of Jackson's classmate Emma. Tall with kind eyes and an easy laugh, Daniel was instantly likable. We bonded over single-parent challenges and exchanged numbers to coordinate future playdates. The following Sunday, Jackson and I attended a local church service at Allie's invitation. She'd been encouraging us to try her congregation, known for its inclusive community and family programs. As we entered the fellowship hall after service, I froze. Standing by the coffee station, deep in conversation with the pastor, were my parents. They spotted us simultaneously, Mom waving enthusiastically as though we were expected friends. "What are you doing here?" I hissed when they approached. "We've been attending while in town," Mom explained brightly, crouching to Jackson's level. "And you must be Jackson." "I'm Martha." Jackson, normally outgoing, pressed against my leg, sensing my tension. "This isn't appropriate," I said firmly. We discussed waiting until I was ready for introductions. The pastor approached, smiling warmly. "Stanley, I see you've met our visitors from Wisconsin. They mentioned they were hoping to connect with family in the area." The deliberate way they'd ingratiated themselves into my community felt calculated and manipulative. They'd presented themselves as loving grandparents separated from family, garnering sympathy and potential allies. Worse, I spotted Daniel across the room, watching the interaction with interest. My parents had managed to insert themselves into multiple areas of my life in just 2 weeks. That night, I received a text from Daniel. "Your parents seem nice. They mentioned dinner next weekend with you and Jackson. Emma and I would love to join if that's happening." The invasion of my carefully constructed life was accelerating, boundaries ignored, narratives controlled. What began as an unwelcome birthday card was evolving into something that felt increasingly like a hostile takeover. The weeks following my parents' unexpected church appearance became an exercise in boundary enforcement. They had rented a local apartment, explaining to neighbors and church members that they'd relocated temporarily to reconnect with family. The sympathetic nods and encouraging smiles from people who knew nothing of our history made me feel like I was living in a parallel reality. I drafted a clear email establishing ground rules. No surprise visits, no contacting Jackson's school, no introducing themselves as grandparents to anyone in our circle without my permission. Their response was tepid acknowledgement, followed by selective compliance. Daniel and I grew closer despite this complication. Our children became inseparable, leading to family movie nights and weekend outings. He was divorced, understanding the complexities of fractured family dynamics. When I finally explained the full history with my parents, his support was immediate and unequivocal. "They don't get to rewrite history," he said firmly. "And they certainly don't get to steamroll back into your lives on their terms." His validation meant more than he could know. October brought parent-teacher conferences. Jackson was thriving academically, his teacher full of praise for both his abilities and his kind nature. As I left the school, I spotted my father in the parking lot, chatting with Jackson's teacher. Rage flared as I approached them. "Mr. Green, your father was just asking about Jackson's progress," Miss Bennett said brightly. "It's wonderful to have such involved grandparents." Dad had the decency to look uncomfortable under my glare. After Miss Bennett moved on to greet another parent, I confronted him. "This crosses every line," I said quietly. "You have no right to approach Jackson's teacher." "I have every right," he countered. "I'm his grandfather." "Not in any way that matters," I shot back. "What are you really doing here? After 5 years of complete silence, why this sudden interest?" His expression shuddered. "We made a mistake. We're trying to make amends. By ambushing me at every turn, by manipulating everyone around us, that's not making amends, that's staging a coup." The confrontation ended with strained civility, but the violation lingered. That night, I updated Jackson's school records, explicitly stating that only I and 2 emergency contacts, Allie and Daniel, were authorized to receive information about him. The following week brought the first real insight into my parents' motives. Daniel and I had taken the kids for ice cream after school when he mentioned meeting my parents at church coffee hour. They seemed really concerned about retirement planning, he said casually. Your dad mentioned some business setbacks. This was news to me. What kind of setbacks? Daniel shrugged. Something about investments gone wrong. He said they'd always counted on family during retirement, especially with medical costs rising. The pieces began falling into place. Further discreet research confirmed my suspicions. Dad's hardware store had been struggling against big box competition. Their home had a new mortgage after being paid off for years. Mom had delayed retirement despite reaching eligible age. They weren't seeking reconciliation. They were seeking financial security. The final confirmation came from an unexpected source. My mother's sister, Aunt Paula, had always been the family rebel. She emailed me out of the blue after seeing one of Mom's social media posts about reconnecting with family in California. I don't know what they've told you, her message read, but you should know your father's business is failing. They've remortgaged twice and borrowed from everyone willing to lend. Your mother mentions how successful you've become at that tech company. Just be careful what you're getting into. The tech company misconception was revealing. I worked for a modestly funded nonprofit, not a lucrative tech firm. They had constructed a narrative where I could provide financial support. Armed with this knowledge, I consulted a family law attorney. The consultation was sobering. Grandparent rights vary by state, the attorney explained. Given their sustained lack of contact, followed by consistent attempts to establish a relationship, they might have a case for visitation rights, especially if they can demonstrate it's in Jackson's best interest. How could it possibly be in his best interest to have relationships with people who abandoned us? I asked incredulously. She sighed. Courts tend to favor family reunification when possible. Their narrative of being denied access could be persuasive to certain judges. The possibility that they could gain legal access to Jackson, despite their abandonment, was terrifying. I strengthened our legal protections, updating my will to name Allie as Jackson's guardian should anything happen to me, with explicit instructions regarding my parents. The situation deteriorated further in November when I received formal legal correspondence. My parents had filed for grandparent visitation rights. The panic attack hit during a critical work presentation. My chest tightened, vision narrowed, and breathing became labored. I excused myself, barely making it to the restroom before collapsing against the wall, convinced I was having a heart attack. A concerned coworker called an ambulance. At the hospital, after tests ruled out cardiac issues, the diagnosis was anxiety. The doctor recommended stress management and therapy. Whatever's causing this level of stress needs addressing, she advised. Your physical health depends on it. Daniel drove me home, staying late to help with Jackson while I recovered. His steady presence and practical support were anchors in the storm. When Jackson was asleep, Daniel finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. Have you considered what would happen if they won some form of visitation? The possibility felt like admitting defeat. I can't let that happen. He took my hand. I know lawyers. Good ones. Whatever this costs, you don't have to face it alone. His words carried multiple meanings. That night, after he left, I realized how completely he'd become woven into our lives, not as a replacement for what was missing, but as something entirely new and whole. The court mandated mediation before proceeding with the grandparents' rights petition. We met in a sterile conference room, my parents across the table with their attorney, me with mine. The mediator established ground rules for respectful communication, but tension crackled through every exchange. We simply want to know our grandson, Mom explained tearfully. We've made mistakes but shouldn't be punished forever. My attorney countered with documentation of their 5-year absence, the returned mail, the canceled insurance during pregnancy, the financial abandonment. Their attorney pushed back. My clients made efforts to reconnect for years before finding their grandson. They've consistently sought contact since locating him. The mediator turned to me. What are your specific concerns about allowing supervised visitation? The question forced me to articulate fears I'd barely acknowledged. They abandoned me when I was vulnerable and needed them most. They've never shown remorse for the actual harm they caused, only regret for missing out on a relationship with Jackson. They've manipulated my community, violated boundaries repeatedly, and shown no respect for my role as Jackson's parent. Why would I trust them with my child? Dad's face reddened. That's not fair. We've apologized repeatedly. For what, specifically? I challenged. For telling me I wasn't your son anymore? For cutting off my health insurance while I was pregnant? For letting me think you wanted nothing to do with us for 5 years? You've apologized for vague mistakes without acknowledging what you actually did. The mediator redirected. What would meaningful reconciliation look like to you, Stanley? The question caught me off guard. What would it take? Not just words or presence, but actions that demonstrated true change. Acknowledgement, I said finally. Real acknowledgement of the harm done. Respect for my boundaries. Time to rebuild trust before any relationship with Jackson. And dropping this legal action immediately. Mom leaned forward. We've tried respecting boundaries. You shut us out completely. Because you showed up without warning, inserted yourselves into my community under false pretenses, and approached my son's teacher without permission. The mediation ended without resolution. As we gathered our things, Dad pulled me aside. This is going to get messy if you force it to court, he warned. Think about what's best for Jackson. The thinly veiled threat ignited something protective and fierce. I have thought about it. Every day for the past 5 years while you were pretending I didn't exist. The court date was set for January. The holidays passed in a strange limbo, my parents sending lavish gifts for Jackson that I returned unopened. Daniel, Emma, Allie, and a few close friends celebrated Christmas with us, creating new memories to overlay the anxiety. One afternoon, in early January, I received a text from Daniel that made my blood run cold. Your dad just approached me after church, wanted to talk about our shared interest in the family's well-being, offered to help with Emma's college fund if I could help you see reason about visitation. I shut it down immediately. The blatant attempt to manipulate my relationship was the final confirmation of their true motives. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted control. 3 days before our court date, the family therapist appointed by the court requested a joint session. I arrived to find my parents already seated in her office, looking simultaneously defensive and smug. I've reviewed the case materials, the therapist began, and I'd like to understand what everyone hopes to achieve through this process. Dad spoke first. We simply want to be part of our grandson's life, to give him the benefits of extended family. And what are those benefits, specifically? The therapist asked. Family connection, cultural heritage, financial security for his future. The last item hung in the air, confirming my suspicions. The therapist noticed it too. Financial security is an interesting benefit to mention, she noted. Can you elaborate? Mom jumped in. Thomas means educational opportunities, college savings, the things grandparents traditionally provide. The therapist turned to me. And what are your concerns about this involvement? I took a deep breath. They're presenting themselves as traditional supportive grandparents, but that's not who they are. They rejected us completely until recently, and I believe their sudden interest has more to do with their financial situation than genuine care for Jackson. That's absurd, Dad sputtered. We've always cared about family. Enough to abandon your pregnant son? To cut off health insurance when I was at my most vulnerable? To return every birth announcement and photo unopened for years? That kind of care? The therapist observed our exchange carefully. There seems to be a fundamental disconnection between how each of you perceives the past 5 years. Mr. and Mrs. Green, can you acknowledge that from Stanley's perspective, your actions constituted abandonment? Dad's face hardened. We made mistakes in how we handled things. But Stanley chose to have this child knowing our values. He chose to cut us off. The deliberate distortion of reality was breathtaking. I have every card and letter returned unopened, I countered. Every receipt for certified mail you refused. Documentation of canceled accounts and insurance during my pregnancy. How exactly did I cut you off? The session continued with similar circular arguments, until the therapist called time. I'll be submitting my assessment to the court, she said. In the meantime, I strongly encourage everyone to reflect on what a healthy relationship would actually look like, and whether litigation is the best path to get there. As we left, Mom touched my arm. "Stanley, please. We just want to be family again." I looked at her directly. Family doesn't do what you did. And family certainly doesn't try to bribe my friends or manipulate my community. If you actually want healing, start with honesty, with yourselves, and with me. The court date arrived with stomach-churning anxiety. I'd prepared Jackson for the possibility that some relatives might be meeting him soon, without details that would burden him. His innocent question, "Are they nice people?" had nearly broken me. The courtroom was coldly formal. As both sides presented arguments, I watched my parents' carefully constructed narrative unravel under scrutiny. Their attorney spoke of devoted grandparents, denied access by an unforgiving son. My attorney methodically presented evidence of abandonment, boundary violations, and manipulative behaviors. The judge, a stern woman with penetrating eyes, asked pointed questions of both parties. When my father mentioned financial support they hoped to provide, she zeroed in. "So you're in a position to offer significant financial assistance to your grandson?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. "We would make sacrifices, of course. According to financial disclosures, you've remortgaged your home twice in 3 years, and your business shows significant losses. Where would these funds come from?" The question hung in the air, exposing the hollow nature of their promises. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke from the heart about Jackson's stability, his thriving development despite the absence of biological grandparents, and the community we'd built. "Jackson has never lacked love or support," I explained. "The only thing my parents could offer him is a relationship with people who demonstrated they're willing to abandon family when it doesn't meet their expectations. That's not a lesson I want him to learn." The judge's decision was decisive. While acknowledging the general value of grandparent relationships, she found insufficient grounds to override parental authority in this case. The petition was denied, with a note that the parties could revisit the matter in 1 year if circumstances changed significantly. Outside the courtroom, my parents approached. For the first time, their confident facade had crumbled. Dad looked suddenly older, shoulders slumped in defeat. "This isn't what we wanted," Mom said quietly. "What did you want exactly?" I asked. "Because from where I stand, you wanted access to Jackson without accountability for your actions. You wanted to play grandparents without doing the work of reconciliation." Dad cleared his throat. "The business is failing. The house is underwater, we thought. We hoped." The naked truth finally emerged. "You hoped I'd support you financially," I finished for him. "And you thought access to Jackson was your leverage." Mom's tears seemed genuine for once. "It wasn't just that. We've been so lonely. Watching everyone else with grandchildren, knowing we had a grandson we'd never met. A grandson you rejected before he was even born," I reminded her. "Actions have consequences, even when those consequences hurt." As they turned to leave, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and grief. The parents I'd known were gone, replaced by these desperate strangers wearing their faces. "If you ever want a real relationship," I called after them, "it starts with honesty and respect, not manipulation and legal threats." Dad paused, looking back with an expression I couldn't quite read. "We did love you, Stanley. We just didn't know how to show it when you disappointed us." "That's not love," I replied quietly. "That's control. And Jackson deserves better." The months following the court decision brought an unexpected peace. Spring arrived with new growth, mirroring the fresh start we'd been granted. Jackson thrived in kindergarten, making friends and showing a remarkable aptitude for science. Work brought new challenges and opportunities, as Tech Futures expanded its programs. My relationship with Daniel deepened into something solid and sustaining. Our children formed their own sibling-like bond, creating a blended family that felt both natural and earned. We moved slowly, aware of the stakes and complexities, but with growing certainty about our shared future. 3 months after the court case, an envelope arrived with my parents' return address. Inside was a handwritten letter from my mother, unlike any communication we'd had before. "Dear Stanley, this letter is long overdue. For 5 years, We've been telling ourselves a story where we were the wronged parties, the disappointed parents whose son had rejected family values. It was easier than facing the truth. We failed you when you needed us most. Your father won't admit it fully yet, but the business is gone. We've filed for bankruptcy. The house will be foreclosed next month. Everything we thought defined us has crumbled. It's humbling in ways I never imagined. Losing in court forced us to confront our true motives. Yes, we hoped your success might provide a safety net. We convinced ourselves this was normal, family helping family. But we hadn't earned the right to ask that of you. I keep thinking about what you said outside the courtroom, that real relationships start with honesty and respect. You were right. We've offered neither. So here's honesty. We were wrong. Completely, unequivocally wrong in how we treated you. The shame of having an unmarried pregnant son overtook our responsibility to simply love you. We abandoned you at your most vulnerable moment. We deliberately returned your attempts at contact. We constructed a false narrative to preserve our reputation. And recently, we manipulated and pressured you instead of earning back trust. There's no excuse for any of it. Only deep regret. We're starting over completely. Your father found work managing a store in Arizona. It's a significant step down, but it's honest work. I'll be substitute teaching until I can secure a permanent position. We've rented a small apartment and are learning to live with much less. I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation. I just wanted you to know that your words found their mark. You deserved parents who chose you unconditionally. I'm sorry we weren't those parents. With love and regret. Mom. The letter sat on my desk for days while I processed its contents. The bankruptcy explained their desperate attempts to establish grandparent rights. The acknowledgement of wrongdoing seemed genuine, if overdue. Their relocation to Arizona removed the immediate pressure of their presence. I discussed the letter with my therapist, with Daniel, with Allie. All agreed it represented a significant shift, though none pressed me to respond immediately. Trust your instincts, Daniel advised. They've earned skepticism. 2 weeks later, I sent a brief email. Thank you for your honesty. I need time to process everything. Please respect this boundary. I'll contact you when divided by if I'm ready for further communication. Their response was simple acknowledgement, the first boundary they'd respected since reappearing in my life. Summer arrived, bringing Jackson's 6th birthday. We celebrated at the local science museum with his friends from school. As children explored interactive exhibits, I watched Jackson explaining a gravity demonstration to Emma with surprising accuracy. He's remarkable, Daniel said, coming to stand beside me. You've done an amazing job with him. We have, I corrected, including him in the compliment. That evening, after the party, Daniel proposed. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet certainty as we cleaned up birthday wrapping paper. I want to do this life with you, he said simply. You, me, the kids, a family we've chosen and built. The word family had carried so much pain for years. Now it felt like possibility rather than burden. Yes, I answered, equally simple. We married in October, a small ceremony in the church that had become our community. Jackson and Emma served as best man and maid of honor, beaming with importance. Dr. Williams attended, her presence a reminder of how far we'd come from that first meeting in her office. After much consideration, I sent my parents a wedding announcement with a brief note. We're building something new. I thought you should know. They responded with appropriate congratulations and no presumptions. It was progress. The holidays approached with their inevitable emotional complications. After discussion with Daniel and our therapist, I sent my parents a carefully worded email. Jackson has been asking questions about extended family. If you're still interested in establishing a relationship, we would consider beginning with a video call at Christmas. This would be brief and supervised. Please confirm if this is something you want. Their response was measured excitement, agreeing to all conditions. On Christmas morning, after presents and pancakes, we scheduled a 15-minute call. Jackson was naturally curious, but not overly impressed by these strangers called grandparents. My parents were awkward but respectful, asking appropriate questions about school and interests without overwhelming him. When Dad attempted to mention future visits, I smoothly redirected, one step at a time. After the call, Jackson shrugged. They seem okay. Not as cool as Grandpa Williams, though. He had adopted Dr. Williams' husband as an honorary grandfather months earlier. The simple comment highlighted an important truth. Biology created connections, but love and presence created family. Spring brought another court date, but this time by choice rather than compulsion. Daniel and I filed for him to legally adopt Jackson, cementing what had already become reality in our hearts. The judge who had denied my parents' petition now approved this new family configuration with a warm smile. Families come in many forms, she noted. The best ones are built on love and choice. As we celebrated afterward, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Saw the adoption notice in the court records. Congratulations to all of you. Your father and I wish you every happiness. No demands, no expectations, just acknowledgement and good wishes. That summer, as Jackson finished first grade with honors, we made a decision that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. We planned a family vacation to the Grand Canyon, with a 2-day stop in Arizona to visit my parents in person. Their apartment was modest but welcoming. Dad, now managing a home improvement store, seemed smaller somehow, humbled by circumstance. Mom had secured a teaching position at a local elementary school, finding purpose in her work again. The visit was carefully structured, short interactions, public outings, clear boundaries. Jackson approached his biological grandparents with the natural caution of a child meeting unfamiliar adults. They respected his space, following my lead on appropriate topics and activities. On our final evening, while the children played a board game with Daniel, Dad pulled me aside. I need to say something I should have said long ago, he began awkwardly. I was wrong. About everything. How we treated you. What we expected. The kind of father I was. He paused, gathering courage. I'm proud of the man you've become. Not because of anything I did, but despite everything I failed to do. The words I'd once desperately craved now arrived when I no longer needed them for validation. Still, they mattered. Thank you, I said simply. We don't expect to be central in your lives, he continued. But we'd like to be part of the extended circle, on whatever terms you set. For the first time, he was offering relationship without conditions. It wasn't erasing the past, but it was acknowledging the present reality, that any place in our lives would be earned, not demanded. The journey back to California gave me time to reflect on the winding path that had brought us here. From that devastating phone call during sophomore year to this moment of fragile new beginning, nothing had unfolded as expected. The hardest lessons had yielded the greatest growth. Abandonment had taught me self-reliance. Rejection had taught me the value of chosen family. Fighting for Jackson had taught me the strength of boundaries and the courage of conviction. Back home, as life resumed its normal rhythms, I found myself thinking about cycles and choices. My parents had responded to my pregnancy with conditional love, rejecting me for failing to meet their expectations. In creating my own family, I'd deliberately chosen a different path, one where love remained constant even when circumstances changed. Jackson will face his own challenges and choices someday. What matters isn't protecting him from difficulty, but showing him how to move through it with integrity and compassion. Sometimes the hardest journeys lead to the most beautiful destinations. The family we've created isn't what I imagined when I held that positive pregnancy test 6 years ago. It's richer, more complex, and entirely earned through love, choice, and persistence. It includes Daniel and Emma, Allie and Dr. Williams, the community that supported us, and yes, in a carefully managed peripheral way, my parents. Family isn't just who shares your DNA. It's who shares your journey, who stays when staying is hard, who loves without conditions or expectations. It's the people who see you at your most vulnerable and choose to draw closer rather than pull away. The greatest gift we can give our children isn't protection from all hardship, but the knowledge that they are unconditionally loved through whatever challenges arise. That's the promise I made to Jackson the day he was born, and it's the promise I renew every day as his father. Have you ever had to decide between family obligation and personal boundaries? What helped you make that difficult choice? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, the family you build can be stronger than the family you were born into. Wishing you strength and clarity on your own path.